So welcome to the podcast. I am super excited to have two industry luminaries on the call with me today. Karl Mattson from Noname Security and Yinon from Wiz. Like, if you don't know these guys, then I don't know where you've been. So we're going to start today just having a conversation about a number of different things, right? Want to thank Kathy and the crew over there for putting this together and giving us a platform to come and just chat about a number of different things. So RSA, we are coming off the heels of RSA, guys. So what's your overall take? And Karl, I know you've got a number of different questions that you want to pose to both of us, and we'll talk through. But give me a general sense of coming off of RSA, how you guys are feeling. Did RSA energize you? Did RSA make you take a deep breath and say, "Oh hell, like that again"? Like where are you at coming off the heels of it?
Well, good to see you, Larry. We ran into each other a couple of times last week. But part of that is just that our RSA is alive again. The attendance is extraordinary. There's a lot of energy there, and so I walk away pretty encouraged, because even if we look at some of the macro developments, like economically, like things appear to be slowing down in some areas. Some companies aren't so healthy right now. I feel good that as a cybersecurity industry, we're in a good spot. Like we're weathering this pretty well. I just felt like a very positive kind of vibe coming away.
Yeah, I agree. I think the energy was in the air. It was great to see the conferences going back to live, and everybody. I think as a community, it was great to see everyone and really create this personal touch, right? And see everyone. I think also on what Karl mentioned, I think that cyber remains like top priority, and that's very encouraging, right? The economic changes and so on didn't impact that. I think. Priority within the organizations, and we're seeing a lot more awareness, and I think interest to see innovative solutions that solve hard problems that organizations are really wanting to solve. So that's like my takeaway.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you. I think RSA is back. I think we are back in full swing and full cycle mode, pre-COVID. Scenarios, right? Everything that I saw, everything that I heard, the number of events, and just the sheer number of people, it was good to see, and it felt good that we have gone over the hump and are back in where we want to be. So recently, Wiz and Noname announced an alliance to partner on cloud and API security jointly. What drove that partnership, right? And what can customers expect out of this partnership that's going to bring value to them?
Well, first, it comes from customer demand. Customers ask for it, and when customers ask us for integrations with the adjacent technologies that are utilizing, that's just such an easy thing to say yes to. And so I think for us, it's the ability of a user of either of our platforms to be investigating something, a misconfiguration, a vulnerability, an event, and to have that available to them without context switching, having the issues and events and the context right there, so that we have multiple sources of information. That just makes the customer's job easier. You move faster when you can see the fuller picture. So anytime that the customer comes to us and says, like, "Hey, we want a better integration with this platform," we're going to say yes. But of course, if it's Wiz, we're just going to say yes faster. So.
Yeah, totally. I agree. Actually, Noname and Wiz sits in a very interesting places in terms of cloud security. Wiz provides infrastructure visibility and accurate representation of risk, whether it's through exposures, identities, vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, combining that to one single crystal clear view of how is my risk within every workload, every code that I run. And Noname, on the other hand, provides really interesting insights into the runtime, like what is actually happening within my APIs, within the network pattern, the activities there. And this is, I think, combining these two words is actually contextualizing. And as Karl mentioned, I think that today context is the name of the game. People want to be like security, and not only security professionals, I think also engineering teams and DevOps teams. They want to understand immediately what happened, how they can actually address a risk. And I think combining these two views is exactly that type of newer security that provide them everything at the tip of their fingers. And customers are asking for it, and I'm very happy that we were able to integrate with Noname and provide this partnership that gives both sides of the house, if you may.
So you both mentioned customers, right? And also being in the tech space, I get customers drive things. Coming out of RSA's conference this year, right? We recognize that AI was a huge discussion. What are you guys doing as it relates to that to better help your customers as you guys move forward?
Go ahead, Yinon.
Yeah, so I can start by saying actually AI, it's interesting because one, there are things that I think there are new risks that are now being introduced, and this also concerns lots of the customers, right? So new risks in terms of privacy, data leakage through using AI insecurely. The other risk is, of course, AI in the hands of the red side, the bad guys, and what are they able to now basically what type of attacks they can now run that that are smarter than ever from what we've seen in the past, right? So these are two risks that I've heard a lot about. In terms of how we are leveraging within the tooling, I think there is one immediate aspect that I think AI can really simplify, and this is like a human to machine interface, meaning like, can I ask very simple questions in a natural language and get a really good response in terms of queries, rules, baselines that I want to set up? So can we make this part of describing our policies, describing our intent much more natural, and hence reduce the bar to entry? So I think this is one area where we can think. And the other thing with AI that is interesting is that as we learn across large sets of data, and as we map greater and greater pieces of our cloud environments, can we really tell where would the highest risk come from in a way that is not prescribed? So today, for instance, Wiz can really identify prescribed attack path in a way that is 100% deterministic. So all of these attack paths that we can look for, we are actually running these queries on the graph, and we are finding path using flow analysis on the graph from internet to, let's say, sensitive data through vulnerabilities, exposures, identities, secrets. So this flow analysis is very deterministic, but can we identify patterns that introduce risk to the company so we can, for instance, focus on improving behaviors of our engineering teams, of our business lines, that we can learn from looking at this massive cloud graph that we've created, and just identify what can I do as an organization to be more secure in the next time. So these are like, I gave two red side issues to blue side, and I think that AI in general gives us a infinite, it inspires us to do more and deliver more on both sides.
Got it. Karl, what about you guys? How does that play? How does this AI space play in your world? What are you doing to deal with the threat? How's that going to impact your customers?
Yeah, and you hit my mental model for this experience. I think of AI surface now is really it's like a diamond. And I apologize if the video drops here. My stable's internet connection's wobbly. But it's like the old diamond model that we used to have in threat intelligence. And so I think about AI as there's attacker, defender, developer, customer. And so in each of those like four quadrants, there's risks and opportunities, because as a defender, for example, I want to ensure that employee utilization of ChatGPT or OpenAI API or ChatGPT's API is conformant to good policy. I want to ensure that developers are using the sort of the best use for things like code quality. If we ever get to start using generative AI for code quality checking, like that should be on purpose. And so as I go across this sort of four different sort of axes of AI, I think that there's risks and opportunities in all four areas. And so I don't think we necessarily have that right now in terms of like as an industry. We don't have like an AI model or an AI framework. There's no NIST CSF for AI, but I think we need to get there really quickly. And so whether it's 4 axes or whether there's 6 of them. So in terms of internal policy, we're looking at those sort of 4 areas: attacker, defender, customer, developer, and trying to make sort of good first step actions for in each lane. And you hit right in the center target where the most like sort of obvious near term value is can we enable with like sort of an AI capability simply the opportunity for the customer to just make better use of our platform, right? Questions and knowledge bases and things like that could save phone calls or support tickets and things like that. And so that's something that we want to get right out the gate because we see a ton of value there. And then probably further down the line would be things like how do we consider equipping developers with sort of AI assisted development? Because I think that like GitHub Copilot and other capabilities are amazing as a CISO. I'm not ready to say yes to that yet. I'm going to get there. Not today, but hopefully soon.
So it's very interesting, Karl. I love your diamond reference, right? Where AI does have a different role, threat, right, risk based on the 4 areas, but it's also got a different opportunity based on each of those areas. If we think about AI, and we've been talking about AI for years now, right? I can't even remember how far back, 5-6 years, that AI and ML became the 2 acronyms that everybody was throwing out in everything they were doing. So if we think about that and we look forward to 2 to 3 years, and we think about the future, what are the things that, for cloud native technologies, what's that new usage? What are the things that are going to be coming out, right? AI is, again, 5-6 years ago, we've been talking about AI, right? But it's not until now that we are now really starting to discuss AI in any really meaningful way, largely because there's been this thing created, right? Specifically ChatGPT, and now all of its offshoots from generative AI. If we think forward 2 to 3 years as it relates to cloud native technologies, cloud native things, what are the things that you guys are thinking about that we aren't really largely talking about or largely utilizing today that in 2 to 3 years are going to be largely discussed, largely talked about, largely utilized, that either present risk or present opportunity?
Yeah, we can keep it as a discussion because it's more like a brainstorming, right? But I think
of course.
Yeah, it's I
Look
think
in your
that,
crystal ball.
the crystal ball. I think that one thing that I really like about cloud and cloud technologies is that it truly offers us the opportunity to be ultra descriptive of our environment ahead of time. And by this, I mean that we can thrive to have like a completely immutable environment. I know this was discussed, but I've seen very few customers that can actually say they have, fully immutable environments. And but I think this remains, like a really, security-wise, it unlocks the opportunity to be 100% like descriptive on what we expect to have in the environment, and then be able to react to any changes that are unwanted in a way that is automated and close that loop immediately. And I think that the more we go deeper into using of the this pipeline and infrastructure as code and fixing at the source, and then creating this remediation loop that goes back instead of fixing in cloud, actually fixing in the code and redeploying. And the faster we get in this cycle, the better the opportunity of us as an as an industry to react to threats, to new threats, and also to active threats that we see in our networks and environment workloads. So I think that's one area that we haven't paid enough attention, but we have the technology to do it, and we just need to continue and push to implement it wisely. So that's one. The other thing that I see as a general trend in security, and it has started, but now I see it more and more, is actually the opportunity to democratize security. And by democratizing security, I mean that for decades, security was basically within the realm of the security team. But as we empower more our developers, our end users, what I'm actually seeing are trends that actually hand over the decisions and the actions to our end users, to our developers, right? And this creates a whole different dynamic in the sense that finally we can create secure by design systems, because security is not bolted on in the last minute, right? Or after deployment. And I think these two opportunities of empowering our edge, namely like the developers, the end users, and democratizing the security decisions to them. And then on the other end, creating a really immutable environment that is fast enough to respond to threats in minutes, even. I think these these two trends can really give us in cloud native environments very robust system, very resilient systems. So these are like my 2 cents on trends that we would see. But Karl, again.
Anecdotally, on my Twitter feed about a week ago, somebody tweeted a job opening for a tech company in the Silicon Valley for a job description called a prompt engineer. The prompt engineer was a $360,000 salary position. 30 days ago, I'd never heard of a prompt engineer, but I kind of think about it. I'm like, you know what? What's really gonna shift here awfully quick is skills. Is exactly right. There's automation, there's orchestration, there's remediation, there's event detection. There's some really amazing, sophisticated capabilities that are available for companies who are making that cloud journey. But the keystone of making that work is going to be the human still. It's still going to be the orchestrator. And so I think one really interesting variable is going to be watch things like job descriptions and roles. A security operations analyst doesn't have to just be that anymore. Can a security operations analyst, empowered with good training and the right tooling, also become a vulnerability remediator? Can they also become an access administrator in some cases? I think that those are some emerging trends, and we're going to have to do those. Like it's a prerogative that we have to pursue. There was a stat that Gartner released a couple months ago that. I'm going to get this right, so I apologize to Gardner if I don't get this exactly right. But it was 43% of organizations are now at the 50% mark of moving to public cloud. Well, what that means is that we aren't even to the halfway point of transition to public cloud. So if you couple the reality that there's a lot more cloud transformation ahead of us than there is behind us. And so what that means is we're going to have to tool up. Workload explosion is only going to continue. Automation is there. Even the AI components are not, quite maybe ready for prime time, but all the recipe ingredients are there. And the secret to getting this right is going to be whether we can train our people to utilize these platforms and technologies in a more sophisticated way. And it probably doesn't look like the security team of the past. It probably is like a reformulation of boundaries, like DevOps teams, developers, infrastructure, IT security. We may have to wrap our arms around saying goodbye to some of those organizational divisions to get our companies where we need them to go.
So, yes, I agree, and I'm going to challenge you both, right? So, this notion of democratizing security is great. But we aren't just now thinking about this, right? I've been in cyber almost 30 years. I've been a CISO well over 20 plus of those, right? I've had security embedded in the development teams for years at organizations, right? I've put training in place for developers to learn secure coding practices and principles. How long we've been training our end users, right? On with through knowledge and understanding of being smarter than the things that they're getting via email, to not, hey, like, use some common sense when you get an email from the CEO and you happen to sit 4 offices down from them, and you don't just get up and walk down and ask their secretary and say, hey, did he just send me an email asking me to go get these cards from Target, right? I mean, so this notion of democratizing security is something that we've constantly been trying to push out, but there's been a lack of willingness to accept it, right? Because at the end of the day, security is hard, and you have to make some hard decisions that sometimes have a negative impact on the outcome that you hopefully wanted. Meaning, hey, I want to run fast and I want to do this now, but the security parameters are going to put boundaries around my ability to do so. So how do we change that narrative moving forward? Do we think that the threats are going to force it? Do we think, like, what do you feel that both organizations are going to have to do and that technology providers are going to have to do to sort of force this narrative even further?
Yeah, I actually love the fact that you mentioned it. I think these were the two biggest challenges we had that prevented it until today. I think that today, one, the level of awareness that we have to cyber, it's unlike anything we had before. I think both at the C-level and CEO boardroom level, that's one, but also in the in the development community, right? We see how easy it is to basically create insecure architectures. And I think people understand that they don't want to be the one that created it, right? And they see how, like with secure coding, they see that now it's real. Like there are misconfiguration, there are architecture that they can implement, and they will basically expose, I don't know, the company's IP, for instance, or sensitive PII. And I think that with that awareness, drives a larger incentive to be, the one that is taking the right decision. And the other thing that is happening is that I think security matured enough in order to create a least resistant path to making the secure choices. And by that, I mean that because we are more prescribed than ever, and because we are identifying risks better than ever and providing context, like Karl mentioned, better than ever, now we can really identify when things may go wrong and provide enough context, but in a simplified manner that not only security professionals will be able to grasp and react to, but also like the ordinary average developer in every organization. And I think that these two advancements, and whether we are using context because we are integrating more sources today than ever before, and this data consolidation drives much more accurate representation of a risk, and if because we are using tools that explain better what is the problem, like graph-based representation of risks. So I think all of these drive to really, these are the enablers to create this motion. And the last piece that I will mention is that in order to, like the ignition part, this was one of the toughest, like when we look at the history of security, look at the on-prem, look at the endpoint security, like it's always after the fact. Only once someone does something, this is where we can basically react to it. And now with cloud, it's a very different dynamic. We are coding something that is about to be run in the cloud, and only after it's run, now we can detect it, but now we can also detect it, before it's being even deployed. And this ability to really run earlier in the process, I think that's what's driving a significant change.
Well, go back 25 years, there was always this sort of wonder whether companies moving from brick and mortar business footprints to digital of who was going to win, who was going to lose, and it turned out that you could do both. You could win as a brick and mortar store, you could win as a digital only store, and everywhere in between. There is no like perfect business model. I think what a security team might be tempted to do is to try to pursue goals or to pursue technologies or to pursue staffing that isn't exactly what their business model needs. So, like for example, if I have a completely if I have no custom applications and I don't use open source software, I don't need open source software scanning technologies. So the security team bringing in all these fancy tools in that environment has no. It's self-defeating. There's nothing value to be gained. So I think that the security teams need to be like inside the conscience of the CIO about what is the technology footprint that we're building, and as that technology footprint and the architecture choices are made, that the security team is at the table, is a participating contributor to the process of selecting how and when do we move to cloud? Do we a Kubernetes shop? Are we a Docker shop? To be there as a participant in the process, because there is no one future state that everybody's going to adopt, but there is one future state that each of our companies is going to have. And so the security team has to be, by the way, as a CISO on my Slack channels, everybody argues about where the CISO is supposed to report to organizationally. I am adamant that answer is the CIO. The CIO is the technical delivery value generator for the company, and the more closely my security team is inside the CIO's head, to me, that's the recipe for success. I don't want the security team doing things that are other than like a native organic reflection of what the technology footprint is, because it's the technology that delivers value, and we need to be adaptable to delivering security that is exactly what that technology footprint needs.
It's a whole nother podcast, just so you know.
Podcast. But I think it's like, for an information security team or a CISO to be an outlier in their own company is a bad thing. Even if being an outlier means that they're trying out new technologies and doing things that, and I've done that. I've brought in a technology that my organization could not consume and make use of. So that's a bad recipe. Be there at the table with the CIO and make choices alongside that.
Well, and so the key word in that for me is alongside. I think the CISO should be a peer to the CIO and be able to hold the CIO accountable. It's hard to when they're your boss.
So here'd be my litmus test is questions Ansible, Terraform, Chef, Puppet, Docker, Kubernetes. Was there a security vote when those choices were made? If the answer is yes, you're at the right spot. If the answer is no, then your org structure doesn't work, because those are literally like the keystone architectural long tail decisions that need data centers, of course, things like that. I'm just using examples of
right.
If I'm at the table when those choices are made and my voice is a part of the discussion, then you can report to the CFO. I don't care.
Right. Keyword right there. If you're at the table and your voice is being heard, because I know part of the reason that CISOs have this dialogue about where they should report is because so many of them don't have a voice. Exactly. They're not at the table or they don't have a voice. So that's why the entire dialogue around where the CISO should report has been a thing for the past 15 years, because there are so many CISOs who don't have a voice. So I think we're ultimately on the same page there. So you guys got into an area that I want to dig into a little bit, and that's open source, right? Or we call it third-party code. You call it whatever you want, right?
You beat me to it, Larry.
Yeah. So there's statistics that say 70% of code is third-party code, right? This whole notion of no one wants to recreate the wheel, right? No one, if somebody's already done it well, why recreate it? Just take a piece of what they have, which has then driven us into this world of SBOM, right? Thank you, SolarWinds, right? This SBOM is now going to become a requirement if it's not already. It's in many, many regulations that organizations are going to have to deal with, right? How are you guys addressing that in your organizations, and what's the importance of this as we move forward in the cloud and just in technology and development of software as a whole?
I think you hit the nail on the head in the sense that I think one of the challenges that we as an industry, we will have a hard time addressing. We have a hard time addressing today, and we still need. We have a long journey until we figure it out. Is open source security, or otherwise saying like digital trust, right? I'm using more and more. It's not only open source, by the way. I'm using many components, right? You can think about it in a cloud environment. I have a whole, I don't know, cloud bomb, right? That contains virtual appliances, libraries, packages, other products, other identities connected to my cloud, SaaS products. Now, all of this is my new perimeter. And basically, I think that the more we connect, this obviously increases the attack surface, and we need to have proper guardrails, thinking basically, how do I, first, like Karl mentioned, how do I, as security, become part of the decision making of incorporating more and more of these, assets into my environment, and making the right decision security-wise. The other thing is, how do I manage the risk that I have once incorporated? So, okay, I'm using this library. How do I manage the risk of that library actually being rolled out across my environment, right? So that's like, and these are like questions of containment, of monitoring, of baselines that we should figure out. I'm not familiar with a good approach to it today, but definitely there are many thoughts in this regards. And third, I think that as we go and do is like incorporate and collaborate with more technologies, the question comes of digital trust. How do I establish trust with my digital components across the environment? And how do I do it in a way that is not a point in time versus continuous? And Larry, you're with RegScale, of course, and I think it's maybe a good opportunity to mention that part of the opportunities that we have in the cloud and partnerships like with RegScale and others allow customers to move to continuous auditing and continuous security, and providing that digital trust to our partners and customers. And I think that's something that is definitely important. And creating that SBOM, monitoring that SBOM, containing the SBOM, or maybe I should say cloud bomb, but containing these different components in our cloud environment is becoming a key part of our strategy. And of course, I think that, Wiz is looking internally the scrutiny process on partners, who's connecting to where the list of processors, we have it from different angles like compliance, GDPR, processors, and so on. I think the processes, the regulations that are now coming into play require each one of us to put higher and higher scrutiny on these engagement or digital collaborations, so we can have proper guardrails in place. So yeah, I think that's a really great point and a great opportunity.
Yeah, I agree, Karl.
They say that the clock is right. A broke clock is right twice a day, right? I think the federal government got the EO on software supply chain right. Secure Software Development Framework, SSDF. I think it's really, really good. So we're leaning into that heavily because that's a full life cycle sort of approach to looking at software security. So as the our software is our product, so we have dozens, hundreds, dozens a month of customers who want to establish trust with us, and they want to understand, like, can I trust this software has been designed and built with security? So whether it's SBOM, whether it's a questionnaire, whether it's a flawless tenable scans, like it doesn't matter. Like we're ready to say yes to everything. Because what we want to do is we want to highlight the product security as a value proposition, as a benefit. Is like we're a company you can trust, and here's the evidence. And we want to be able to provide that evidence sort of in any format. You want to do an SBOM one time, you want to do a continuous SBOM. Anybody who's a net software publisher, if you're a producer software, you have to embrace, I think, customers coming at this question from every conceivable angle, and accept that customers are going to ask for different ways of proving evidence. and they're not wrong. As a
Right.
software producer, if you don't have the answer, you're the one that's wrong, because there isn't really an industry standard. Hopefully, SSDF will get us there over time, but we have to sort of wrap our rounds around earning trust in any means the customer wants that from us.
Yeah, and I think you're both right with this. It's not an option anymore, right? As organizations, right? We at RegScale are doing things around this as well, and the whole aspect of continuous visibility, being able to know and at a moment's notice where things are and how things stand in your organization. And to your point, there's so many regulatory compliance things coming down the pike that are going to mandate this, and if you aren't able to do this or show in the software that you develop or the software that you consume, that this is something that you're paying attention to, you are going to fail, and you are going to be, hit with some costly fines from regulators. So that's a huge thing. So let's switch a little bit, right? So you're over in Israel, but you've got customers here in the U.S. And we're in this global economic downturn, right? We've got so many things happening globally. The software supply, the supply chain is backed up. There's just a huge global economic impact that's going on around the world. And even though RSA seem to be back in full force, I know many CISOs and many organizations who sent no one, right? They were like, listen, travel budgets got cut. Like, we're just not going to make it out there. Or they typically send multiple people, they sent one. Like, so how are you guys seeing this impact on your customers? What's the impact on security, right? And what's the impact from just the overall cybersecurity industry as a whole when we think about this economic downturn from your perspective?
Karl,
well,
want to start?
I think first thing is like a little bit of benefit in a lot of ways to having security organizations, CISOs, get to the board and really do things like ROI, cost benefit analysis, portfolio rationalization. That's healthy. That's a good thing. And that we have this economic sort of cloud over us right now, if that's what it takes to sort of get us back to maybe a more predictable, durable pattern of buying and selling technologies, that's probably a good thing, healthy for everybody. I think overwhelmingly, I think everyone's preparing for a downturn that has not really materialized outside of a couple of verticals. And so, and we're all, everyone's nervous about that, but the reality is we might still get out of this without really much of a downturn. So we're all, I think cautiously going into the second half of the year, thinking about the possibility of downturn. Hasn't really emerged, but I think we can lean into the idea that it probably is healthy for for most organizations to be more thoughtful about what they buy, whether they're maximizing the value, and conversely, it's a good thing that customers are putting more pressure on us as vendors, more pressure to build more technologies, give more value. That makes for better security teams.
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I agree with Karl. I think that one, security became a business in the sense that people look at our security teams are looking for ROI, business justification, and also the value to the business, right? So how they are enabling the business to move faster. And I think, being in cloud security, cloud has always been a huge factor in driving the business forward and innovating faster and building faster. So I think in that sense, cloud security, cloud and cloud security within is still a driving factor for many organizations in actually accelerating, budgets and innovation and investments in this space. With that, I do see like the need for consolidation, right? So customers are looking for consolidation more than ever. If in the past it was, oh, that's a great solution, let's put it on top. I think that now customers are driving for, tell me what it replaces. Like, what do I not need right now, given that I've implemented like a Wiz, right, for instance, and it drives like the need to clean up or maybe really have a more consistent security stack versus what we had before. The third thing that I would mention is that security remains top of mind, right? So although budgets are tighter with the economy, at least I'm not seeing like a significant or to be honest, any decrease in the cyber spend. In many cases, they are basically looking to optimize investments as there is and manage within the budgets they have. So it's not like other areas that have significant cuts and stopping investments.
Yeah, I think to both of your points, right? There used to be this term we called shelfware, right? And I know so many CISOs that were going down the line of buying point solutions that they never got off the ground, and it became shelfware because they moved on from it, but even though they had acquired it, moved on to the next shiny object. So I definitely think this, to your point, Karl, this economic downturn we envision, right? Because we some people will say, if you look at the finance and news, and that we are in a recession. Some people say the recession is coming, right? Who knows exactly where we're at, right? I think it's really organization dependent, but it's going to be interesting. I want to pull on a little string in a word that you said, Karl, and that's value, right? And so, first off, ROI has been something that security leaders have shied away from for a long time, right? Because it's hard to measure, well, what is the return, right, on investment. But this whole notion of value, I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and I asked him, I said, I've seen this transition from POC, right? Remember, it was POC for decades, proof of concept, show me your stuff works, to now it's everybody's talking POV, proof of value, right? So help me understand from your perspective, what drove that transition, and what's the difference between a POC and a POV, or is there? And is it just that based on the time that we're in, where security's come from to where it's at, and its place in the organization, meaning the business, that people are now saying, okay, everything from a security standpoint, we must be focused on value versus just the concept of whether this is going to work.
Yeah, I think this is a really welcome development. So, proof of concept to me is a test of whether the technology works. Proof of value is a test of whether the risk reduction or operational efficiency was achieved, which are different things, right?
Right.
Because in a lab environment, I can show you that my integration with F5 works. Right? Technically, that's not a problem. But what if I'm giving the teams a terrible user experience, or what if I'm giving a limited workflow out of my system into the adjacent systems? That's what value is, right? Value is where the outputs or the brain of Noname gives the customer something that's actionable, and when they take action on it, whether it's the raw platform or an adjacent platform, that action actually had the intended outcome. That's a really good place to be, is when you're focused on outcomes rather than focused on, for example, yeah, I have a Jira integration, but is that, until your people use it and start to actually achieve outcomes, it doesn't tell you whether or not you're going to get the ROI. So very, very good development.
Yep, great. What about you?
Yeah,
you being a former practitioner, right? You're a unique case, right? You were a former practitioner doing this stuff, so you were doing, right, having POCs given to you from external entities, and now you're on the other side as the founder of a tech company and a capability. How is providing value adding more for you, right, as a tech company performing this, versus just a proof of concept that it works?
Yeah, I think, one thing we need to remember that security has a lot of skepticism in the air, right? When you get a new product, you never know if it delivers on its promise. You never know if it scales to your needs. You never know if it has all of the capabilities baked in like you expect. And I think that in order to overcome it, at Wiz, we've taken like the POV approach from the very, very start, right? Basically, I don't want to have theoretical discussions. I want customers to connect with to their live environment, see the live value that they get, comparing all of the other tools they may have in place, and basically take a decision that is informed based on the actual results of the tool. It's creates a much more transparent way. And also the side benefit is that in most organizations, it's actually much easier because I get to see the actual value immediately. In most cases, I don't need to start running for, specific use cases, for specific scenarios. I don't need to do like theoretical side-by-side comparisons between Wiz and other tools I'm already running. You get to see immediately what is shown and what is the added value that you get, and also what would be the operationalization aspects of that tool in your environment. And these are the benefits of the POV. It's huge. And I think that the more, the better. And by the way, that's another huge benefit of cloud. It makes it easy to POV versus to POC.
Agreed. I agree with you both. Any questions?
Larry, maybe just one comment. It's interesting you mentioned it. I think that a lot are asking about the growth of Wiz and how come we were able to basically get to more than 35% of the Fortune 100 when we are only 3 years old? So the answer is that actually this is one of the key reasons, right? Because if you get to a POV and you can scale out effectively and customers see the value, they can adopt you quickly. So basically, both for the customer and the vendor side, I think there are huge benefits in the POV, and it allows us to do business faster. And so just had a thought about this as well.
And one other thing I'd add to that, Larry, with Noname, and I'm sure Wiz is the same, customers can ask more out of that evaluation period. It can be a prod deployment, and it can be a prod deployment for a couple of weeks or whatever the case is. So I think 5 years ago, every time I tested out a technology or the team did, they'd stand up a dev instance and they'd test it out. That doesn't really tell us a whole lot. We need to be running in a production environment or a subset of production to really see if this technology platform is going to end up giving us the sort of the outcomes we're pursuing. So companies should be asking more. You should be asking for more, and I think that's like to Yinon's point, getting value. You should expect value. You shouldn't expect the technology to work. You should expect outcomes to be achieved, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, then I've got one last question for both of you. Now, us coming off of RSA, there's so many things that happen. There's so much that we saw. We talked about this at the top. RSA is back. What is your most positive takeaway? Because there's gonna be a lot of doom and gloom. There's gonna be a lot of people talking about the marketing and the hype and blah 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 blah. Right, with RSA. But what is your biggest positive takeaway from RSA 2023 that you want to share, knowing that both of you were in many, many rooms and I ran into both of you at different places and we were all over the place doing a bunch of different dinners, meetings, blah, blah, blah. What's your biggest takeaway that you come back that gets you energized for moving through the rest of the year?
I actually have a sort of whiz story from RSA. I haven't told anybody yet this. So during RSA, like 6 different times, I ran into somebody that I've met in my career, and they brought their kid with them, like their college student, recent grad. They brought this person with them, and they're now mom or dad is taking their child through this RSA experience. And so I met all sorts of like college people because they were there with their parents. So like we now have a second generation of people coming to RSA. So I hope a lot of people keep doing that. Like bring a college student, bring an intern, drag them with you to every event you go to, every training session, because what an amazing experience. But I did meet somebody from Wiz at an event or down by the booth or something. It was an employee at Wiz who introduced me to their daughter. I'm like, oh, it's nice to meet you. And I asked the daughter where she went to college, where she was in school. And it turns out that she's like a working professional, a product manager for a large corporation. And she wasn't a student at all. So but I just kept having that experience of getting introduced to someone's kids. Like the second generation is coming up. I just think that's an awesome thing. Larry Cyversity event had a bunch of like really junior people all the way up to, experienced CISOs. Like that's a really encouraging thing that we've got like really young talent in the room all the time now.
Yep, agreed.
I think security is becoming an exciting space, in a space that people are excited to be part of, excited to bring, their children to, right? So security is becoming institutionalized in the sense that it's no longer like, on the side. It's it's interesting, it's exciting, it's happening. And I think this is like what I got from RSA. It's like this excitement of the cybersecurity industry and the space. So that's positive.
Yeah, for me, I'll tell you, it's the diversity. I'm starting to see more people, more diverse crowds, more diverse entities. The Cyversity event, of course, had, the largest crowd we've ever had. But just when I look at the conference overall, whether it was sessions I attended, whether it was the session that I gave, or just looking at the floor as a whole, a lot more women, a lot more people of color. It's wonderful to start to see that the conference represent more of what we see societally. So I'm excited for the future of cyber. There was also a lot more, I'll say, conversations around cybersecurity in the board that I had privately at this event, and more than I had previously. So that's also energizing because, cybersecurity has struggled getting board level visibility for the decisions and things that cybersecurity executives need to be a part of the conversation. So, well, listen, I want to thank both of you. This has been a great conversation. Yinon, Karl, both of you are part of amazing organizations that are doing amazing things, and you're both amazing people. I'm glad that I can call you both friends. I look forward to having more conversation like this with each of you over time. For everybody that gets to watch this, please, take away something. There are a lot of nuggets that were dropped here by both of these gentlemen. You should be able to take away something that you can take back to your organization and be better tomorrow than you are today. Thanks, everybody.